Alright, we're going to carry on with Chapter 7, video number 4, the array elements and the different parts. So as we create an array, there's different kind of parts. Now, remember the name of the array, we called it numbers array, and that's the variable name that we're going to use that's in the stack, and we're going to tether that up onto the heap. Now, the heap, as to reference the actual values, some terminology that we use here. They call it the element. So the element is what stores the variable. Now to address the element, we use a subscript. And the subscript is it's kind of like the index of the particular array. So we just have to get used to these terms where when we're going to store the variable, so in this case, unfortunately, it's a 0 right here where my mouse is rolling. That's the variable. Now, what contains that is the element that you can store the variable in, and then you can address this particular element with a subscript. And that's some of the terminology that we need to use here. It should be noted here that when we do create an instance of an array and we dimension it out a particular size, that by default, numeric arrays elements are automatically initialized to a value of 0. So there's automatically a value of 0 put into those elements, into all of those subscript and all those elements. Alright, and this is kind of repeating again what we've talked about in previous videos. In another slide here is, again, when we create an instance of an array object, we have our variable that's stored in the stack, and we're pointing to or referencing basically a particular location up onto the heap. And you can see here in this example that they've dimensioned out 5 elements right here. And you can see here this is the subscripts right here, and that's just the name of the variable name that we called it. So if we want to reference any of these particular variables in here, we can just actually use this right here to reference that particular value. Alright, here's sort of an example of how this could be done. So here we go, we set up a size, we're going to dimension out for 5 elements, and this is our creating an instance of the object. And again, we're creating an array here called numbers array. We're creating a new instance of this object up onto the stack. We're going to dimension out 5 elements, and then we can go through individually and we can load those elements. We can take the integer value of 20 and put it inside of this element, subscript 0, and we can repeat the same thing, put 20 into element number 1, subscript 1 here, and so on as we work our way. So this is how we initialize the array. We can load the array, you might think of it like that. And then later, if we want to access the value, we can access it by simply typing in the name of the variable, the array variable, putting in, of course, the square brackets denoting it's an array, and then the subscript to point to it. And in that case, this would be this one right here. They're all 20, but it would be this one right there. Now, another way to initialize the array, and this is probably the preferred way to do it, in that previous example, you can load each and every individual element in the array. But in this case here, you can see that by putting in the parentheses right here and simply putting in the values, we can load the array if we know what the values are ahead of time. Now, we could do this in a simpler fashion because we put in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so the computer knows the size. So we can simplify this by basically taking out the size constant in here because we've initialized it, and the computer knows it's been dimensioned at the time of creating this object. So it knows how many to size it up. Now we can simplify it even further by taking out the new int right here. That's taking out this part right here because we've already assigning or initializing the values. So we can simplify the creating an instance of this object, this array object, and initializing initializing all the elements by simplifying it down to this method right here. Now, I normally use actually this first one at the top because it's a little more descriptive, but you can actually use any of these 3 methods. They all do the exact same thing.